God chose him, he won, and then he destroyed everything he had built. This is not a parable. This is Gideon, and the Bible hides nothing. Most people only know half of this story. 300 warriors, clay jars, torches, victory. But if you stop there, you miss the most important part, because the book of Judges does not end at Gideon's triumph. It continues. And what happens next forces you to go back and read the entire story again, differently. Today we walk the full path of Gideon, from fear in a winepress to victory over 135,000. And we will not stop where everyone else stops, because it is in that full path where the real message lives. The Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and for 7 years he gave them into the hands of the Midianites. 7 years. The Midianites came every harvest season, together with the Amalekites and other eastern peoples. The Bible says they were as numerous as locusts, and their camels could not be counted. They devastated the land, destroyed every crop, took every animal. The result, Israel was brought to ruin. People hid in the mountains, in caves, in rocky clefts. This is the backdrop, a nation on the edge of disappearing. And it is precisely in this moment that God moves. The angel of the Lord came and sat down under the oak in Ophrah, where Gideon was threshing wheat in a winepress to keep it from the Midianites. When the angel of the Lord appeared to him, he said, "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior." Stop at that scene. You thresh wheat on an open threshing floor, where the wind carries away the chaff. Not in a winepress, a narrow pit carved into rock. Gideon was hiding. He was afraid the Midianites would see him. And it is to this frightened man, crouched in a pit, that the angel of the Lord appears and says, "Mighty warrior." Gideon's response is honest and bitter. "Pardon me, my Lord, but if the Lord is with us, why has all this happened to us? Where are all his wonders?" This is not rebellion. This is the question of a man who has heard stories about a great God, but is living in a reality where nothing great is visible. God does not defend himself or explain the past. He gives an assignment. Go in the strength you have and save Israel out of Midian's hand. Am I not sending you? Gideon pushes back. Pardon me, my Lord, but how can I save Israel? My clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least in my family, the least in the weakest family of the weakest tribe. And God's promise says nothing about Gideon's talent. It is simply this: I will be with you. Gideon asks for a sign and receives one. Fire comes out of the rock and consumes the offering. Gideon builds an altar and names it, "The Lord is Peace." The first thing God commands him to do is tear down his own father's altar to Baal and cut down the Asherah pole beside it. Gideon obeys, but at night, because he is afraid of his family and the men of the town. This is a detail that is easy to miss. Even after the sign, the fear did not go away. He obeys, but he hides. Then the sign of the fleece, twice. Gideon asks that dew fall only on the fleece while the ground around it stays dry. God does it. Then Gideon asks the reverse. A dry fleece and wet ground. God does it again. Notice Gideon's words before the second request. Do not be angry with me. He knew he was asking for too much. But God does not grow angry. He answers a second time. What does this reveal? Not perfect faith, but a God who patiently leads a person, step by step, through their own doubts. Gideon gathered 32,000 warriors. Against them, 135,000 Midianites. And the Lord said to Gideon, "You have too many men. I cannot deliver Midian into their hands, or Israel would boast against me, saying, 'My own strength has saved me.'" First cut, anyone who is afraid, go home. 22,000 left. 10,000 remained. God says, still too many. Second cut, at the water. Those who brought the water up to their mouths with their hands were set apart. There were 300 of them. Everyone else knelt down to drink. 300 against 135,000, a reduction of 99%, not to showcase Gideon's strength, but so that after the victory, no one could claim a human army had done this. God knew Gideon was afraid, so that night he gave him a personal confirmation, in an unusual way. Get up, go down against the camp, because I am going to give it into your hands. If you are afraid to attack, go down to the camp with your servant Purah. God does not shame Gideon for his fear. He gives him a choice. Go alone or take someone with you. Gideon goes down with Purah. In the enemy camp, he overhears a conversation. One soldier is telling another about a dream. A round loaf of barley bread came tumbling into the camp, struck a tent, and knocked it flat. The other soldier immediately interprets it. This is the sword of Gideon. God has given the Midianites into his hands. When Gideon heard the dream and its interpretation, he bowed down and worshipped, right there, in the darkness, next to the enemy camp. He worshipped. This is the peak of his personal transformation, not blind courage, but gathered, conscious trust. Gideon divided the 300 into 3 companies. He gave each man a trumpet, an empty clay jar, and a torch hidden inside the jar. Watch me and do the same. When I get to the edge of the camp, do exactly as I do. When I and all who are with me blow our trumpets, then from all around the camp blow yours and shout, for the Lord and for Gideon. At midnight, during the change of the guard, simultaneously from all 3 sides, 300 trumpets sounded, 300 jars shattered, 300 torches blazed. Each man held his position around the camp. The whole army ran, crying out as they fled. The Lord caused the men throughout the camp to turn on each other with their swords. They never even drew their own swords. The Midianites, in their panic, cut each other down and scattered. And here is the moment most people skip. After the victory, the people come to Gideon and say, "Rule over us, you, your son, and your grandson, because you have saved us from the hand of Midian." Gideon answers correctly, "I will not rule over you, nor will my son rule over you. The Lord will rule over you." But immediately after this, he makes a strange request. He asks the people for the gold earrings from the plunder. The people give them gladly, 1,700 shekels of gold. And Gideon makes from that gold an ephod, a sacred garment, and places it in his hometown of Ophrah. What follows is one of the most sobering verdicts in the entire book of Judges. All Israel prostituted themselves by worshiping it there, and it became a snare to Gideon and his family. The same man who tore down the altar of Baal at God's command has now created an object of idol worship with his own hands, not out of evil intent, but out of his own hands. The gold that was meant to represent God's victory became a trap for an entire nation. Why did the Bible record Gideon's failure? Because it does not write legends, it writes truth. Gideon is not a model to imitate. He is a man who encountered the living God, received an impossible victory, and then, in the moment of glory and recognition, made a choice that damaged the people around him. This is a warning, not that God made a mistake in choosing Gideon, but that even a genuine encounter with God does not protect you from pride, does not remove responsibility, does not make the next step automatic. Victory is not the finish line. What you do after the victory, that also matters. Gideon began in a pit, frightened, full of doubts, with questions aimed at God. He grew slowly, an altar, a sign, a fleece, an overheard conversation in the dark near an enemy camp. He won not through his own strength, but through the presence of God. And he fell, not to an enemy, but to the gold left over from the victory. His full story is not about what you should be. It is about who God is, patient, faithful, not abandoning a person even in fear and doubt. And at the same time, about the reality of human freedom and the fact that every choice carries consequences. The question this story leaves behind: where are you right now in the winepress, where you still don't fully trust? Or already after the victory, where the temptation is to take a little gold for yourself? Both places are dangerous, but God is present in both. The Bible tells us that after Gideon's victory, the land had peace for 40 years. 40 years. That is not a small thing. An entire generation grew up without the shadow of Midianite terror over them. Children who had never known what it was to hide in a cave, to watch their harvest stripped away, to go to sleep hungry because an invading army had taken everything. That peace was a direct fruit of Gideon's obedience, of those 300 men, of the clay jars and the torches in the dark. But the Bible quietly introduces a detail that will matter soon. Gideon had 70 sons, because he had many wives, and a concubine in Shechem bore him another son, whom he named Abimelech. That name, remember it, because the very next chapter tells us what Abimelech did. He went to Shechem, gathered support, and killed 69 of his 70 brothers on a single stone. One survived, the youngest, Jotham, who hid. The man who refused to be king still lived like one, and the consequences did not skip a generation. This is not written to condemn Gideon. It is written so that we understand. The story does not end when we think it ends. The choices made in prosperity, in comfort after the battle is won, those choices shape what comes next for the people we love and lead. Gideon's greatest victory was not over the Midianites. His greatest test was the 40 years that followed. And that, perhaps, is the most uncomfortable mirror this story holds up to us.